Hi there, welcome back now for part 2 of our 1 in 48 scale Red Arrows Hawk T1 trainer step-by-step build. In part 1 we got all our cockpit all painted up and everything, and what we're going to do now is we're going to start doing some weathering. Now where I left off was I showed you a bit of kind of like painting a bit of detail and everything on our cockpit and stuff, and I didn't want to bore you with kind of painting the whole thing up, so off camera I just painted on just the detail bits, like our two pilots here. We've got them all nicely painted up, but we've got no weathering or shadows or washes or anything like that on. We've even done our seats and instrument panels. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do some weathering. Now this is a bit of a crap cockpit, should I say, on the sense of detail, so we can't really get too fancy, and by having our pilots in here we're going to hide basically some of this bad detail of the cockpit instrument panels and ejector seats and that kind of stuff. So we can only really do some basic weathering really, and to be honest with you, this is a basic video, so we don't want to be going too mad with like weathering of tones and all sorts of kind of fancy stuff. So to keep this simple, for this one I've got a homemade wash I've made, which is a bit of Indian ink, a couple of drops, say into a tub like this. We put about 5 or 10 drops of Indian ink, and then about 5 or 10 drops of flow improver, and then the rest is water. So pretty cheap stuff, to be honest, because I mean you could, yeah, we've just got loads of Indian ink left, loads of flow improver, and you know, a bottle like this should last you a very long time as it is. And all we're going to do, I'll just get a paintbrush, simply we get a bit of our homemade wash here, and we're just going to brush it all over. Get a bit more on. Just going to brush it all over our cockpit, and what this is going to do is give the whole cockpit a bit of a weathering kind of thing going on. It's going to give shadows and different tones and kind of just livening it up, and not make it look basic and simple, and you know, take away that kind of just the simple kind of painting that we've already done. Now this is going to take a bit of time to dry, and it will kind of dry a bit different to the way you see it when it's wet, and what you've got to be careful of is it pulling up in certain areas, because when it pulls up, when it dries, it will look a bit funny. So you might want to have a slightly damp paintbrush and just kind of like suck up where the paint, well, the wash is kind of like built up somewhere. You might see that there's bubbles on here. A little blow like that and all the bubbles do pop and go away. But I don't know if you can see now, but that plain cockpit now has got a bit more life to it. And we can also do the same with our instrument panels, which this is a very crap detail for an instrument panel, but once we kind of put this on, this wash, even this crap instrument panel kind of livens up, where all this wash goes into the recessed panel lines and just gives it a bit more than what it was, which was that. As you can see, I mean, there's a bit of a nicer difference. Still not the best of detailed instrument panels, but still, you know, it just livens it up, it just gives it that bit more. And then we can come along on this instrument panel later, and I think we mentioned before, we can come along with where the dials are and put a bit of gloss into the dials just to give us the illusion of glass. And we can do the same with our very not so detailed ejector seats. Same sort of thing, same principle. Just get this done. Now the good thing is once this is dried, you can come along with a cotton wool bud, because you might find that you're going to have areas where you put this wash down which look a bit kind of where it might have pulled up somewhere you didn't notice, or it dries not quite right. You can come along with a cotton wool bud and you can give it a light rub away. Now when it comes to using this cotton wool bud, if you put a gloss coat on and then let that dry and then you put this wash on like we have, you can rub away more wash with a cotton wool bud if it was on a glossy surface. This is a matte surface, so when you come to rub this away with a cotton wool bud, you're not going to rub away as much wash, and it gives you different effects depending on whether it's a glossy or a matte surface. As well as that, if you have a wet cotton wool bud, you're going to rub away more of the wash, and if you have a dry cotton wool bud, you're going to rub away less of the wash. And this will give you different effects depending on surfaces and whether your cotton wool bud's wet or dry. So it kind of depends what you're going after. If you want a kind of a clean cockpit, then maybe a glossy surface as well as a wet cotton wool bud, so you get rid of more of the wash, making it look cleaner. If you want it dirty, you know, leave it matte and rub it down with a dry cotton wool bud maybe. You'll kind of get the idea as you kind of get more experience with the whole thing, but hopefully that made sense. The other thing is as well, I mean, our pilots, I mean, you could really put some nice detail on pilots. We can do all sorts of kind of painting tricks of highlighting and all this kind of stuff. But this is a basic video, and just to liven this up, we're just going to do the same thing here as well. We're just going to put on a bit of this wash, and it's just going to put shadows and dirt and make it look grimy and go into all recess areas and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of liven this up, liven up the face a little bit, you know. And it is a very basic, very easy, but yet, you know, it's a nice effect to what you want. And then you just kind of try and soak up where it's maybe gone in areas a bit too much. We just soak a bit up, right? And I don't know how well you can tell on camera, but as you can see, our black wash has kind of gone into the clothes area and kind of give them shadows and highlights and all this kind of stuff, which, you know, for something as simple as that, it has given it a nicer effect than what a just plain painted figure is. And that is kind of the basics of putting down a bit of weathering, really, just slapping down a bit of wash. Okay, so we're going to add a bit of mud brown pigments to our bottom of our cockpit area. I'll put a bit of plastic card down. You can put a bit of paper down because it's going to get messy, and we're just going to get a bit of a dry brush and we're just going to kind of just put a bit of this mud brown just in the bottom of our cockpit, just to kind of make it look a bit dirty, a bit brown, just to make it look as though the pilot's boots and stuff are a bit dirty, and I've managed to, you know, step in here, and on the bottom of our cockpit area we're a bit dirty and we're a bit grimy, but still making the top part of our cockpit looking, you know, relatively clean. And this is just to kind of show you that you can just come along and you just brush in this pigments just to give you that bit of a dirty effect, and then we can blow this away a bit. And as you can see, we've just got a bit of dirt in the bottom of our nice cockpit there. We can also come along, maybe we could get a bit of our pigments, and maybe we could just do a bit on the bottom of our seats here, just to kind of dirty them up as well. We could even get our pilots and we could put a bit of this pigments on the boots as well, just to maybe kind of dirty them up a little bit. Just a nice little effect, although you're not going to see this, but you can do this if you want. Just kind of showing you. And really, I mean, at this kind of level, I mean, this is just a nice bit of basic weathering, you know, not going into it too much. Just to kind of maybe talk about other things, I mean, we could have come along and we could have done a bit of, got a bit of paint, and we could have got a dry brush, and we could have done a bit of dry brushing. We've even got, I do like to use the MIG Productions, these filters. I do like this grey filter for like areas that are, you know, maybe black and whatnot. This is quite nice. I like to do it on wheel wells and landing gear as well. It's just, you just brush it on. That's quite nice and easy. I do like this, the dark wash as well by MIG Production. You can do all sorts of really nice dirty kind of grimy areas with this one as well. And I do like their oil and grease stain mixture. This is good for like engines and doing a bit of like grease and grime in certain maybe World War II kind of wheel wells and stuff like that. But apart from that, I mean, that's the basic kind of gist of it. Now I'm just going to let this dry a bit. And once it's dried, I can come along with, say, a cotton wool bud, and I can, like as I mentioned before, where the wash hasn't dried quite so nicely, kind of maybe clean it up a bit or whatnot. But I'm gonna like cut away now, and we're gonna get on with gluing this all, starting to glue all this together and everything. So I'll be back in a sec. Okay, now we're gonna get down to some gluing. Now all I've done is I've trimmed up. Well, I've looked through the instructions, and I've decided I'm not going to follow the instructions. I've kind of gone through and I've picked out the pieces that I know I want to use to get this basically built, to be able to fill, sand and scribe this model nice and easy without doing it step by step. So just to start off, we're going to get our cockpit in, and we're going to stick our two pieces of fuselage together. Now just want to test fit our cockpit here to make sure that it goes into our fuselage section. Alright, which it looks like it does quite nicely. Yeah, as you could see. However, I haven't actually glued our instrument panels down yet, so that might be a bit of a hindrance. So I'm just gonna get these off. Get a bit of our extra thin cement. I'm going to drop these in place. And then put a bit of this extra thin cement down. So just put a bit at the back. So get this in place. Looks okay. That's a bit better. There we go. And just a bit on the sides. We're not going to need too much glue, because I mean, these aren't exactly going to break off or anything. But right, they're in place now. So now we're going to retest to see how well this fits. Okay, there we go. It's nicely fitting even with our instrument panels in play. Right, so we're going to get one of these fuselage sections, and we're going to glue our cockpit to our fuselage section, just to keep it in place. As well as we've got to put, I think it's a 10 gram weight in the nose. Right, so we want this in position, so at least we can see where we can put our weights. Okay. Okay, I think that'll do. Just to hold it in place. Right then. Okay, I've got a little box of goodies here, and what we want to do, we want to get some weight in the front. So any kind of screws you can get your hands on, you can use BB pellets or anything like that. You can even get some lead that you put on roofs, if you can get a piece of that, and you can kind of cut that up however you want. But I like to use some simple super glue. What we're going to do, we're just going to pile all this into this little bit of space that I'm seeing just on the nose section here. That looks to be nicely out the way, and we're just going to pour a bit of super glue in here, and it should hold all them in position, hopefully. And if you want to speed it up, we've got some kicker here, and you spray this on, and what it should do is it should make the super glue dry instantly. Basically what it does is it thins the super glue down so thin that it just dries up a lot quicker than it would normally. Very useful when putting remove before flight tags down. But that's all glued into place now, all nice, so that's good. And I'll just put this lid back on. Right then, now I think I mentioned it before, but there's an exhaust that the instructions ask you to put in. There's no need to put that in right now, because to be honest with you, I mean, you can nicely do some metal spraying on that, just to hold on, that didn't want to go in for a second, but it does now. Okay, well, as I said, the exhaust, you could do some nice metal spraying on that, and it just slots into our little exhaust hole here, so you don't have to put it in, unless you want to, of course. Right, now I haven't put any glue on this, which, as I've probably mentioned before, you would actually probably come along normally, and you'd probably put some glue in it, and then you'd put the two pieces together. But with this extra thin cement, it's a lot neater, a lot nicer, a lot easier if you just get the two pieces together first, something like this. We can come along with, one sec, bits of masking tape, right, and we can just like hold bits together like so. Oops. Yeah, and hold these two pieces together, and probably another one at the back here, and do the trick. Oops. And we're basically just getting this kind of sealed nicely, but without no glue. Our front nose is going to need a bit of a pinch. It's going to be a bit tricky. You can also use stuff like pegs, maybe, just to hold this kind of stuff in, but that's enough together now to come along with our extra thin cement. And what we want to do is we just want to put a bit on a brush, on the end of this brush, and then you simply just put it down and work and help the capillary action of our extra thin cement along our seam line. Now you don't want to brush too hard so that you start brushing the plastic off. You don't want to put too much down that it's just oozing everywhere, but you don't want to put too little down that you don't actually seal up our gaps here. Alright, so I'm just working along the bottom here, and we're just nicely gluing this together and making sure it all joins up and it's nice and level. And now we're going to come to this nose bit here, which doesn't seem to want to fit properly, so we're going to need a bit of pressure down this end, which is easier said than done. Okay. Now on this end it's kind of pinching out a bit. There's probably something obstructing it, but what I can do is a bit of super glue, right, just a bit of super glue just to hold this into position, so as our extra thin cement can work. Right, a bit of kicker to glue it hopefully instantly. Right, and now that there is nicely glued into place, which then will allow our extra thin cement to do its job and get it glued together nicely. Alright. Okay. Just working around the model. Now obviously this is going to take a bit of time to glue this nicely and precisely. Right then, so this is now got glue all round it, all round all its seams and everything, and it should all be looking nice and good and all this kind of stuff. Right, now you want to leave this to dry, okay, for, you know, a considerable amount of time. I mean, you could, because where all these seam lines are, it's all wet, in the sense that the two plastics have melted, they've gone a bit gooey, they've merged together, they've welded together, and for that gooey plastic to actually go rock hard again does actually take probably, you know, to be honest, about maybe 2 or 3 days. I mean, it really does take a fair bit of time to properly go rock hard again. And the problem is, when you come along and start sanding, sanding isn't too much of a problem. You could probably start sanding maybe 3 or 4 hours after. But when you come around to do scribing, that's where you come along with your scribing tool, your pea cutter, and when you kind of scribe across here, when you hit that seam line with your pea cutter, it just digs in and makes a hole. Because the two pieces, where the join is, the plastic is softer than everywhere else. So I tend to try and leave something like this maybe overnight. So I would kind of leave this now overnight, and then I'm going to want to come along and I'm going to want to start gluing all our other pieces together here, so as, you know, I get a load of gluing done, and then tomorrow we can do like sanding, filling, scribing, all that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a bit of bit more gluing and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, I'll cut back when we've got something interesting to look at. Okay, sorry about the last kind of takes, but it started raining and it might have sounded a bit staticky or something, but it was actually rain. It was quite heavy, so sorry about that if you couldn't quite understand, but it sounded like you could understand me well enough. So what I've done now is I've just taken out wing section here, and plain and simply, as you can see, I've used these little clamps. They're quite cheap actually, these little clamps, but you can use normal house pegs, and basically you just clamp down our wing sections here, and then you just glue with some Tamiya extra thin cement, and, you know, you leave that for maybe about an hour and you can take these pegs off, and then give it a bit more time and we can get down to some sanding, filling, scribing, all that kind of stuff with this. Next thing is we've got these air intakes again. I mean, simply we put them together and then we put the glue down, and we're just going to go into where the joins are. Nice bit of glue, not too much, don't rub too hard. Kind of think about where gravity is to make sure you don't get any drips drooping down, and then you get like this Tamiya extra thin cement sort of between your fingers and the actual piece, and then you leave a nasty fingerprint mark, and that's nicely glued into place, which Now would be a good time to put like one of these clamps down, and this should just nicely hold that down, push our two pieces together more, making our melted plastic kind of merge more and squeeze in more, and you know, give you a nicer, tighter seal on that. And we'll just do this to the second one. Just get that done. Now, as you can probably tell, I am not following the instructions here. You know, I have literally picked out specific parts to do first, knowing that my filling, sanding, scribing work is going to be a lot easier if I do it this way, which I'm going to talk about more and explain more of the whole reason why I've picked these particular parts. That's just broke off. Okay, and again we clamp this one down. Next bit is we've got this on top of here. Now this does not fit, and we've actually got a bit of a fit issue. Basically this top bit here on the cockpit, it's too high and it's pushing this piece up and leaving a big whopping gap here, and I think it will play murder with our canopy section as well. So what we need to do is we need to sand this top bit here back a bit. So I'm coming in here with a nice heavy grit to start with, just to really kind of take about, it looked about a mil and a half, maybe two, and then we come in with a, turn it round and we go to a medium grit, and we come in with our sponge, which is like a fine grit, just to smooth it off and kind of round it off because it's a sponge. And then we come along and we test fit and we see how good that is. And again, we're getting there, but we need to take a bit more off, particularly on this side. Right, and this is the one thing about basic modelling as well, is you want to test fit your pieces first before you glue them in. You don't want to just come along and whack some glue on and then put the two pieces together and just hope that it's always going to be perfect, because it's not. Basically, you're always going to have some sort of a fit issue on any model, whether it's a Hasegawa or an Airfix. You know, you're always going to have some sort of fit problem, and you know, a lot of the time you could just come along like I am now, simply, you know, you do a bit of sanding and all of a sudden that fits a lot better, which this does now. So now we can nicely come along with our extra thin cement and we start putting this in to start gluing this into place. I think I need to get a new tub of this because it's not soaking into the bush as good. Which is one thing about these Tamiya extra thin cement, is, you know, there's still quite a bit in here, but the brush doesn't quite touch the bottom, which is a bit of a pain. I do think they need to kind of make the brushes a bit longer, but they don't. You can forego using that brush and maybe I'll just select one. Yeah, maybe you could come along and use a normal brush so that you can get right in there. It doesn't really matter, same difference really. Careful not to get too much on there. So just a little tip if you're kind of running out of this stuff and it's not going on your brush as good. Whereas this is really nicely kind of getting a nice bit of glue on the brush to actually glue this, where it wasn't before. Maybe a slight bit of manoeuvring, a bit of a push down, and I think we're looking good there. Maybe a bit on the inside. Okay, right, so that's in position here. You might want to do a bit of sanding and stuff around this. I mean, actually I wouldn't mind putting a bit of elastic band around this just to push it down a bit, because it just needs that little bit of help sort of thing, just pushing it down. There we go. Well, that's nicely in place now. Then we've got another piece underneath here, which simply I'll just double check the instructions of which way this orientates. Yeah, that's the right way. Again, now this fit is, shall we say, maybe that this piece is a bit too small, so we can't really sand this to fit nicely. It's more of a, you've got no choice, you've kind of just got to glue this in, and then we're going to have to probably come along with a bit of filler just to fill in the gaps where this piece is like a bit too small. So I'm just gluing this into place, just like so. Okay. Yeah, it's going to need a little bit of filler just around the edges of that, but that's glued into place now. So the whole reason why I'm doing it like this, now I've skipped a lot of the instructions here, a lot of the instructions. I mean, I've missed out, there's supposed to, oh God, I mean, I'm supposed to have stuck these intakes onto the actual fuselage. There is actually some little pieces that go onto the wing section here, as well as indicator lights. Indicator lights, they are a clear plastic part. I like to leave these right till the last, because we're going to be spraying all sorts of stuff and it's just going to mess up the clear parts. And there's a few other little things that's supposed to go on here, and then really, I mean, the instructions are telling you to start putting canopies on, and you know, lots of little antennas and all this kind of stuff. Now, if I followed the instructions, it makes the whole sanding, filling, scribing a whole lot harder. Whereas right now what I've got is, I've got this fuselage section, right? This is everything I want on here at this moment in time, right? So now I can come along and I can easily come along with a sanding stick and I can sand out all my seam lines, right? I can come along with my P cutter and I can nicely rescribe where I've sanded, and I can get this looking really nice as it stands as this shape. Now it's nice, easy and accessible. Where if I followed the instructions and I'd stuck on our wings here and I stuck on our air intakes and stuff, one, I mean, it's going to be a lot harder to sand and scribe and everything where I need to, and on the wings and everything, when these two, when the wings and the fuselage are stuck together. The same with this air intake. I mean, I need to sand across here and across the bottom here to nicely get a nice, good, seamless seam line. But if this was attached to here, you know, it's going to be a hell of a lot harder to get in and start sanding this seam line here. It's just easier to look at the instructions and find, right, what is going to be the easiest way of sanding, filling, scribing, as little as it built together as possible. So I know now that if I get this all filled, sanded, scribed, looking all nice, exactly the way I want it and everything, then I've saved myself a lot of time, a lot of heartache, and a lot of, you know, trying to get into awkward places and stuff. And in essence, really, you know, you make it a lot harder for yourself, and you know, you're not going to get as good as a professional finish if you're trying to get into these gaps here and there. Whereas like this, in different pieces, you can get to it all nice and easy and get you a better finish. Once you've done these pieces, then you can like stick them together, and then you've got to come in and like sort out the seams and whatnot that are on here. But you've saved yourself a lot of heartache and you've given yourself more of a professional look. And that's the whole idea of, don't follow the instructions step by step. Just keep it simple. Get the basic bits together to then fill, sand, scribe to a nice finish, and then put the pieces together, do a bit more filling, sanding, scribing, and then a few more pieces together. Just think about it, and then you can leave all your little antennas and all your other little bits and bobs that stick out here and there. You can start putting them on. I mean, in some cases, some little antennas and aerials and stuff, you just leave to the absolute last. When the model's all complete, you just go off and you spray it on the sprue and you cut it off, and then you just glue it in right at the end. So what needs to happen now is all this here now has been glued, and as I say, this extra thin cement does take a bit of time to dry. I want to leave this now for a good maybe 3 or 4 hours before I really do any sanding. I mean, really, I would like to kind of take this and leave all this till tomorrow and then do filling, sanding and scribing. But that's, I mean, 3 to 4 hours you could just get away with it. But I mean, what I could do now is, I mean, there's all little pieces like getting all our landing gear out and maybe polishing up the canopy and doing all that kind of stuff while we wait for this to dry, or even just leave it tomorrow and just work through all the little tiny pieces, getting them all prepped up and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to leave this to dry, and then we're going to work on what we're going to do next. Right then, so as I said before, while we're waiting for this to dry, we can do stuff like landing gear, pylons, weapons and canopies, and this is what I'm going to touch on now. Getting our canopies a real nice crystal clear looking piece of glass. Now there's 2 ways I do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the front part of the canopy one way and the back part another. So what you want to do is you want to get these canopies off the sprue safely, because this isn't like plastic, you know, you do like our normal kind of plastic. I mean, with this it's like scratches, cracks and all that kind of stuff can really ruin your model. I mean, you get a crack on this, a scratch on this, and you could end up literally ruining the whole model, because it's really not one of these things where, you know, if you get a crack in this, you can't really fix it. I mean, anything else on the model, like our normal plastic here, we can pretty much fix and fill and sand and scribe anything. But if you get a crack in these canopies, I mean, that is it, game over. So you want to take extra care when taking it off. Now, using scissors to get it off, you could end up, you get these like little kind of lots and lots of micro cracks when you cut into this, which then could go on to the actual clear part that we want to be clear, and you get lots of little nasty cracks. So what you want to do is about maybe 3 mil or so away from 3 mil on the tab, away from our canopy. Use a micro saw, and you just want to saw off the tab. Right, so we're nicely away from the actual canopy area, and we're just actually sawing our sprue, keeping our canopy all nice and protected. Right, so as you can see from this here, we've got our canopy. Hold on, let's try something new. We've got our canopy here, and we've just left a nice bit of tab just so that we haven't like cut into them. What we're going to do, we can then sand them down so that we don't get that nasty cracking effect. So I'm just going to do the same here. Well, actually what I'll do is I'll show you one way of doing it. Now this way is using our Tamiya polishing compounds. This is way 1. The way this basically works is I'll just get a cloth. You just get yourself a little rag, and what we're going to do is, I mean, this is already quite shiny already, but you can get this even shinier. And what we're going to do is you work through the different grits of polishing compounds. The red one is like a more coarser compound, and I'm just going to show you how I do this, and then it's basically you do the same for each compound, working your way down the grits until you get to the fine, which nicely polishes it off. Right, you just kind of dab on your first compound, and then you just start rubbing and rubbing and rubbing at this compound onto your canopy here, and you just keep rubbing until basically it disappears, you know, going nicely in circles, and you just keep going. Now, I mean, this is like quite time consuming this way, but it does have other advantages, because the other method is to use gloss, to dip your canopy in gloss. But when you do that, you have to at least leave that gloss then to dry for about 2 days. So depending at what stage you are in the model, you might not want to be waiting 2 days for your canopy to properly cure and go rock hard for using the dipping it in gloss method. Whereas this method, once you've polished it, that's it, you can just crack on. Not only that, I mean, if you ever end up at the end and you've got some mistakes going on with your canopy, and you need to maybe, I don't know, maybe you've done a bit of overspray on the canopy, and you might want to come along and use a cotton wool bud with a bit of finish just to wipe off that bit of overspray. What's going to happen is, with the dipped in gloss way of doing it, is you're going to end up wiping away the gloss and it just goes all smeary and horrible. Whereas using the compounds, if you do have that overspray problem, you can come along with some thinners and a cotton wool bud, and you can wipe away, say, whatever overspray there is. So this way is more work, a lot more rubbing and all this kind of stuff, but it is kind of like the safer and sort of you haven't got to wait 2 days kind of thing. Now I've just rubbed that on until basically this compound has gone away. Then you get a clean part of the cloth, right, and then you rub at it again, right, like I am now, just to rub away whatever bits of our compound residue is still left on there. Alright, so I'm just rubbing away at this now, making sure it's all gone. Alright, and now this has gone a bit duller than it was originally. That is because we're using like a coarse polishing compound, right? I don't know if you could tell that it's gone a bit duller, but basically what that is now, that's all nicely ready, and it's hopefully polished out like micro scratches and all that kind of stuff, so that we can come along now and we get out our fine polishing compound. Right, now I'm not going to bore you through going through this and polishing this and whatnot, but basically you do exactly the same for the fine compound, and you do exactly the same for the finishing compound. So what I'm going to do is, now I'm going to go through that and I'm going to show you the finished results. Another note, I mean, you could also polish the inside. It's kind of up to you. I mean, you're going to get a shinier finish, but you'd get an even shinier finish if you did inside. But this was admittedly quite shiny already, so I'm just going to go with shining the top. So I'm just going to cut away and I'll get that done. Okay then, so I've nicely now worked through our polishing compounds right down to our finish compound, and I don't know how well you can see, but that is looking nice and shiny and all nice and glassy. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do some masking. Now a lot of people might think that this is actually quite hard, which it is in a sense. It's one of these things that I can show you, but you're not exactly going to come along and after I've showed you first time you're doing it brilliantly. It's one of these things you just gotta get experience, and you got to get practice with it, and you know, after you've done so many models you'll eventually get there. So I'm just going to show you how you do it, and then hopefully after you've done enough practice you can kind of get there and do it really good. Now You can buy masks for quite a lot of canopies for different models out there. I have used them before and I find that they're not that good. Well, I mean, they are good, but then to be honest with you, I think it's a lot better if you can learn how to do it yourself. You end up with a better result, and it's a lot cheaper, because I don't think they're actually quite cheap. Now, when I do this, what I do is I take this opportunity to have a change of blade. So I take off this blade, which I think I've used for about one model, and it's good to have a nice fresh blade, because when you're cutting the masking tape, if you've got a nice fresh new blade, it's really gonna like literally cut through, knife like through butter sort of thing. So it really does give you a nice finish if you've got a nice fresh blade. We'll just tidy this one up just to make sure you don't cut yourself. Right. Now, if you can get away with not actually even doing any cutting, that's even better. So I'm just going to pull out a nice strip here of 6mm Tamiya tape, and we're just going to find a nice straight edge, right? So I've just put this now on a nice straight edge, so I don't have to do any cutting there whatsoever. You can then pinch in a corner and kind of fold over this bit of masking tape, right? So I've just pinched that there in the corner, folded it, and what we've got here is actually a nice rounded finish. Now it's not going to work so well in this corner, because it's no, it's not going to work well in that corner at all. So I'm just going to cut that there. Right, so we're going to have to do a bit of cutting there. Right, and we're going to do the same on this side. We're going to come along the straight edge, so we don't have to do any cutting there. Get it nice and neat. Right, and then we're going to do the same again. We're going to pinch with the nail and fold it over, and then just follow it around. Okay. Right, and we're going to have to cut a little bit on the end off here. Right, but what we've got there now is, as you can see, we've done no cutting with a blade. Right, and what we've got is that has now gone nicely around our canopy. So now we cut that little bit there. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to come across, and we're now going to follow the back of this canopy piece here and make it go around. Right, and then we're going to cut it so as we don't have to then cut this piece here. Right, so again this side we cut it so that we don't have to cut this piece here. Right, now we've still got to come along and we've got to use our blade to cut this bit off here. So bringing in a light, right, and you, I don't know if you can see this, but you bring it up to a light, so basically you get some nice transparency going on. Hold on, let me just check the camera. Yeah, okay, there is a light just here, and I'm just bringing this so that I can see some sort of a transparency going on, and then I just cut it with my nice fresh clean new blade, and then we can rip that off nicely. And we do the same this side using the light. One sec. And there we go. Alright. Put that light back up. So what we've got now is we're going to take some of this spare bit of masking tape and just mask up that last little hole. Give it a cut so we don't have to do any cutting around the edges anymore. Right, and that's all masked up. I'll just give it a bit of a wipe. Right then, so I've probably made that look easy, but that is all nice and neat now around our canopy, right? As I say, I've probably made that look quite easy, but I think you get the general idea to kind of like practice and start trying to do it yourself. And you know, as I say, you've got to kind of just accept you're not going to get this right first time. You're going to kind of do a couple of these and then you're going to start getting it nice and right. I mean, your first one will probably be a good attempt. I hope it is, but you know, try and kind of bear in mind it's going to take a bit of experience, a bit of time, a bit of, you know, practice to get it right, but you should get there in the end if you get it, if you kind of stick to kind of these kind of principles. So what I'd do now is, I mean, I've got my dipped canopy in here all nice and kept fresh and from dust and everything. After 2 days I'm gonna come along and I'm gonna mask up that one as well. So now we've done our masking of our canopy and we've polished them up and everything. Really, I think for today, and I think for part 2, I think that's it. So in part 3, we're probably most likely going to be covering, we're going to get all our landing gear and gear bay doors and all this kind of stuff cut up, prepped, and probably put on cocktail sticks and everything ready for spraying. But the main thing in part 3 is we're probably going to come along and we're going to cover filling and sanding and scribing and using P cutters and all this kind of stuff to get these pieces looking really nice and seamless, making it look as if like these two fuselage sections were actually one. Right, that's what we want to achieve, and we're going to go through a few tips and tricks of getting that done, and hopefully we can kind of start getting you know, our wing section on and doing a, you know, an odd little bit of fancy filling and all this kind of stuff here and there, and maybe we might get to a stage where we're actually putting our cockpit, putting our canopy on and virtually be ready for some spraying. So that's part 2. You're gonna have to register on the forum to be able to see the step-by-step video build section on the forum, and that's where all these videos are going to be going. So if you want to view them all, you need to register and go there on the genesismodels.co.uk forum. I will be putting up each step so that you don't have to register, but if you can register, then you can kind of view them all, you know, and you can kind of backtrack and kind of look back at old ones and all that kind of stuff, and you know, and hopefully we're going to build up to a lot of nice video builds. Not only that, I mean, by registering you also get to kind of see, you know, what work everyone else has done. You can follow work that I'm doing at the moment. Like at the moment I've got this fancy special camo pattern for a Eurofighter. You know, we've got work in progress photos of that up there, so you know, there's a bit going on there. So just register at genesismodels.co.uk, the forum there, and hopefully I'll see you there. So for part 2, that's it, and I hope you'll be around to see part 3, which I'll probably be doing that in maybe a week's time or something like that. So until then, have a good time modelling, and goodbye.